really want to get this on YouTube.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's a warm welcome to Jack Miller, who is the head of the Cape Independence Party, which is what the new name is going to be, Jack. It used to be the Cape Party. You guys have contested elections for a while, certainly in the Western Cape, but it almost is as though your time has finally come. All of the people who are raising the possibility of Cape independence say that it's never been stronger, or public opinion has never been stronger. But let's go back a little in your history. Where did the party come from?
Well, Alec, first of all, great to be with you and your listeners and your viewers. Wow, you're right. Our time has come. It's been a long journey. There's a few places I can start it with. We can go back to prior to 1910. I believe the Cape has always been different to the rest of South Africa. South Africa is actually not a natural country. Our name isn't a country. It's a geographical location. Where we are, we're at the bottom of Africa, south. So therefore, when the British Empire forced us in the Union of South Africa, they gave us this name without our consent and called us the Union of South Africa. So Cape independence is not a new idea. I believe it exists in the soil, the territory, and in fact, not just the Western Cape, but even KZN has got strong secession movements. The Abu Tembu in the Eastern Cape want independence. We've got two independent countries living within our borders, Lesotho and Swaziland, independent countries. And there's a strong argument for many other provinces to also be independent. But the Cape Independence Party, when we started in 2007, we basically were started out of a complete and utter disillusionment with the direction that the country was going in. And we knew for a long time that Cape independence, or certainly a greater amount of autonomy, was the only solution to the sinking ship that is South Africa.
2007, that's way ahead of the, where we now 14 years later, where it seems to be catching on. It did take a while, though, for you to get any momentum going. Why do you think that was?
Tell me about it. Yeah, it's I think different people have got different capacities for how much they are willing to put up with. And I think that the Cape has largely been insulated to a lot of the destruction that we've seen in other parts of South Africa. I think that it's now becoming blindly obvious to everyone living in the Cape that there is no future for South Africa. You don't even hear the word Rainbow Nation anymore. Now all you hear is expropriation without compensation, and various types of racist and centrist destructive economic policies and political policies pushed by the ANC and the EFF. So I think that we saw that this was coming, and we're at a point now where the destruction, goodness, I mean, all we need to do is rewind a few weeks and look at what happened in KZN. I think the people in the Cape just don't want that. We don't want our malls to be burnt down. We don't want people being shot lawlessly in anarchistic streets. So I think all of these things are fusing together to create the perfect storm for what we believe is an inevitable outcome, not just for the Cape, but this entire union, which was forced upon us in 1910. Its time has come. It didn't work under the British Empire. It didn't work under the apartheid government, and it's not working under the ANC regime. The system itself needs to change, and I believe we'll see not just the Cape go independent, but many other territories in South Africa.
You've contested a number of elections. How have you done at the polls?
Well, we've done exceptionally well when you consider how the political game works. The Americans are almost they have created a science of politics, and basically, if you have a Democrat or Republican candidates and they go head to head, the party, regardless, Republican or Democrat, the party with the more dollars spent wins 9 times out of 10. So let me tell you what the Cape Party situation has been. I've spoken to my friends in the DA in the previous elections and asked them what their budget was. They had a budget of 1.2 billion rand in the last elections. The ANC had a budget of 2 billion with a B rands in the last election. The Cape Party, we scraped together, donations from all of our various supporters in the vicinity of 200, 300,000 rand. So we aren't even in the financial game. So the fact that we are doing so well, the fact that Cape Independence is exploding the way that it is, in spite of us being up against some of the most formidable political and financial odds, I think shows the strength of the idea. Obviously, I'd like to take this opportunity. If anyone who's watching this wants to see Cape Independence happen, this is how politics works. Please go to our website. Please donate 50 Rand a month, 100 Rand a month. It all makes a difference. That's more posters on polls. That's more adverts in radio and online, etc., social media. So money does make a big difference. And I think that's why we've seen our earlier results struggle against parties like the DA and ANC. But now, because I think the issues are so big, Cape Independence cannot be stopped. And I think we're going to see this election. We're going to get the best results we've ever had. And we believe it's just a matter of time before independence becomes a reality.
I'd like to explore that with you, Jack, but the fact that the Freedom Front has now embraced the idea as well, that they're standing for Cape independence, is that not going to marginalize you?
No, we don't think so at all. I think, obviously the Freedom Front would like to say that, but most people are quite astute when it comes to issues like this. Most people who support Cape independence, we realize, have become very disillusioned with the political establishments. And even though I've got good relationships with the DA, Freedom Front, ACDP, no bad blood there. But unfortunately, where the Cape Independence Party is different to the Freedom Front, where the Cape Independence Party is different to the DA, is that we are fundamentally homegrown and custom built for Cape independence. We exclusively contest elections right here in the Western Cape. Now, to put this into perspective, all due respect to those parties, but they are businesses and they have donors and they have politicians who earn very handsome salaries. Now, the way their salaries are earned are through the amount of seats they get in Parliament. Now, here are some facts that a lot of people aren't actually aware of, but 70% of DA seats come from outside of the Western Cape. 93% of Freedom Front seats come from outside of the Western Cape. Whereas the Cape Independence Party, we are 100% exclusively in the Cape. So, even though these parties can say, and we're very happy to see in the last elections, both the Freedom Front and the DA came out certainly moving towards a more decentralized political system. We saw the DA adopt two policies, which we've been promoting for a while, which is a local or provincial police force and provincial transport system. So we were very, very happy to see that. I'm glad to see that the DA is taking notes. And the Freedom Front, they've also been calling for self-determination and now a little bit more firmly, at least in the Western Cape, calling for at least a referendum on independence. That is at odds with Freedom Front National, and we haven't seen them actually put it in their manifesto. So there is a lot of debate about that. So if people want Cape independence, frankly, there is really only one clear political choice. And I mean, it's you don't get clearer than in the name. We are the Cape Independence Party. We will do everything within our fiber and power to push for a referendum on Cape independence.
And that's why you've changed your name, presumably, to become even more aligned with your mission. But what about you? Where do you come from? What's your background?
Well, I mean, just regard to changing the name, I'd say it's more of a returning to our roots. I think people have actually referred to us as the Cape Independence Party more times than they've actually referred to us as the Cape Party. And in fact, when we started in 2007, there was a big debate. Would we be called the Cape Party? Would we be called the Cape Independence Party? And frankly, those two sort of names have been interchangeable for us because people so clearly identify us as standing for Cape Independence. My personal background, well, I mentioned starting the Cape Party in 2007, but in fact, my understanding and roots in this go back a lot deeper. My father was involved in 1993. He founded a group called the Committee for the Cape Republic, and he chose the civic route, a pressure group. He got hundreds of thousands of petitions together back there in 93, 94 to push for. People were asking, what would this new South Africa look like? And he, in conjunction with the IFP, the Progressive Federal Party, the people like Leon Lowe and Francis Kendall, etc., who wrote the book, The Solution, South Africa, The Solution. There were a lot of ideas in 93, 94 about what the new South Africa could look like. So my father, and also he very close friendly friends, Dr. Mario Ambrosini, who was the right-hand man to Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, were on the side of a more decentralized, federalist, if not outright independent restructuring of South Africa. Unfortunately, what we saw happen was the centrist apartheid government aligned with their political, even though they chose different skin colors to persecute, their political ideology had a lot more in common than people like my father and Leon Lowe and Francis Kendall and the roots of the DA, then the PFP, etc. So I grew up with this in every aspect of the environment around me, knowing the history of South Africa and prior to South Africa, and especially fascinated at that young age, seeing these discussions taking place about what pathway South Africa should take, and obviously being heartbroken to see the route that we did take. People often forget that the ANC is not just the ANC. They're part of something called the Tripartite Alliance. Has a close ring to the Apartheid Alliance, but anyway, Tripartite Alliance consists of the ANC, the COSATU, as well as the SACP, and that stands for South African Communist Party. And if people are bewildered as to why we're seeing the types of communist policies that we're seeing in the country today, this is not a surprise. The ANC was always going to move in this direction. And now we've got two versions of extremist fascism and communism in the form of the ANC Tripartite Alliance and Julius Malema's EFF, pulling us ever more deeper into more and more destructive policies. And we have our so-called opposition in the form of the ANC Freedom Front and ACDP, who in the last 27 years have had multiple opportunities to fight against many of these issues far more firmly than they have. And, many people have jokingly referred to the DA as ANC light. And we think that there can be a good party again, but they need to be pressurized to make the right decisions. And this is why we at the Cape Independence Party, we don't want to demonize them too much, but we also want to put enough pressure on them to hold them to account. Now, one of the issues that we have in South Africa is that the ANC has a vast majority when it comes to governing nationally. But what a lot of people outside of the Western Cape don't realize is we have that exact same problem right here in the Western Cape. The DA is an unaccountable force. They've been an unaccountable force for over a decade. And we don't need to go into various sort of some of the stories that surround things that happen behind closed doors that shouldn't have. But basically, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the DA has had a free ride for over 10 years here. And they've had a free ride in a province in which the ANC has never, and I repeat, never won an election. People like to think that the ANC won that one election that was in the early 2000s, but in fact, it wasn't. What it was the crossing of the floor system. And that lasted for one election. And the ANC and EFF and all of these other African nationalist organizations like ZAPA and Pan-African Congress collectively have never gotten more than around 35% of the electorate in the Western Cape. They just don't have a foothold here. So if you combine the Cape Independence Party with the DA, with the Freedom Front, with the ACDP, with all of these parties that are more sort of democratically aligned and Western democratic principally aligned, we get approximately 60 to 65% of the vote here in the Western Cape. And the DA gets the lion's share of that. But the problem is with them over 50%, they can do whatever they want. The key to having a referendum on Cape independence is to get the DA underneath 50%. If the DA is sitting at 49, 48, 47%, and the Cape Independence Party is sitting at 3, 4, 5%, we can then go to the DA and say, listen, we will give you the mayorship, we will give you the premiership, we will give you the majority, but on certain conditions. We want to use your constitutional powers, which guarantee a premier of a province to push through a referendum in that province. And we would like to see you push forward a referendum to decentralize A, B, C, D. That would be the first step. If we faced any resistance to that in negotiations with the ANC or the DA on that, we would then push for the final step and create a political gridlock in which we would not allow the DA to govern in the Western Cape unless they granted the people of the Western Cape a referendum on Cape independence. And that is how a party like ourselves, with as little as 5% of the vote, could force the biggest dog in the yard, the DA, to behave like a party that respects and looks after the interests of its voters better by giving us a referendum on independence. And I would like to add that 2/3 of DA voters are in favor of a referendum on Cape independence. So they should listen to their voters.
Have you had much support or engagement with the Cape independence movement, for instance? We spoke last week, I think it was, with Phil Craig, who conducted the referendum you're talking about. And then there's another organization that actually wants not just the Western Cape, but the whole of the old Cape province, part of the Eastern Free State, and so on, in an independent country. Or are you just rowing your own boat?
No, not at all. In fact, we at the Cape Party, then now Cape Independence Party, we instigated and were very, we thought it was very important for all of the Cape Independence entities to get together. And we had discussions with a gentleman, very respect in the field of independence and self-determination, Dr. Peter Hammond, and discussed putting together an organization called the Cape Independence Forum. And we meet every month on a monthly basis with every single, the invitation is out to every single player in the Cape Independence space. And we've considered critically important to work together with these organizations. It's been unfortunate that some organizations haven't been as willing to work together with us, but that's unfortunately politics. But yes, from a Cape Independence Party point of view, we are willing and open to work with everyone in the Cape Independence space. And in fact, we think we need to work together with everyone in the Cape Independence space. And we hope that others in the Cape Independence space see the importance of that and work together with us too.
And from the DA's perspective, given the swing now amongst its own voters towards this movement and this intention, are you seeing any move from their side, if only encouragement behind closed doors?
Yes, I think behind closed doors and I would say yes. I think certainly if we look at the 2019 elections, we saw that the DA adopted those two very positive stances towards decentralization. Unfortunately, this is where we at the Cape Independence Party questioned, like I said earlier, the DA and Freedom Front and ACDP, in that the DA said in 2019 that if people voted for the DA, they would give us a provincial police force and a provincially controlled transport system. It's been now 3 years since the 2019 elections, and they have done nothing to push forward those two issues. So on one hand, I want to say yes. I want to answer your question by saying yes, they are coming our direction. But I'm also very cautious to say that, because this is the reason we started the Cape Independence Party. Frankly, I mean, everyone involved in the Cape Independence Party are not professional politicians. We're all business owners or entrepreneurs or citizens, voters, taxpayers who are sick and tired of these politicians and these political parties. That's why we started this. So We wouldn't have started this in 2007 if the DA and other parties were doing their job. So I'm liking the noises I'm hearing. I'm liking that. But when the rubber hits the road, are they actually going to go ahead and do it? We don't know, which is why we're urging DA voters to move their vote to the Cape Independence Party, not to get rid of the DA, but to make the DA more accountable. And it's one thing to sit in a private meeting room with the DA and say, listen, guys, this is the route you should be taking, and them sitting on 55% of the vote and going, okay, yes, we listen to you. But then when they leave the business meeting, they go, well, look, we've got a majority, we can do whatever we want, this is why I say to voters, especially DA voters, if you really want referendums on decentralization and Cape independence, you've got to move your vote away from the DA. I know it's a counterintuitive thing, because the DA will do what they've done every election and push their absolute voting lie, which is that if you don't vote DA, the ANC will get in. That is an absolute falsehood, because as I mentioned earlier, if you look at the history of elections, the ANC plus EFF plus ZAPO plus PAC combined have never gotten over in the 30 to 40% of the electorate. And so 60 to 65% of the vote in the Western Cape is secured. And you're not going to wake up one morning from being a DA voter and become an ANC voter or an EFF voter. DA voters will either vote Cape Independence Party or Freedom Front or ACDP. So there is no worry that with the DA sitting on 45%, Cape Party on 5%, Freedom Front on 5%, ACDP on 5%, etc., that the ANC would ever have a chance of getting in. So that is probably the most important thing for people to realize. If they want Cape independence, the DA must be driven underneath 50%.
Jack, you relatively young, or you certainly look relatively young. What about all those young voters, the 18 million that Herman Mashaba talks about, that didn't bother to register, didn't bother to go to the polls in South Africa as a whole? Do you have a similar situation in the Cape, and would you be targeting them to motivate them to vote for you and independence for the Cape?
Well, first of all, Alec, I wish I was young. I've been doing this for 14 years. Can you believe it? And hiding the gray hairs as best I can. I don't blame these youngsters. In fact, for me, it's a sad sign, but it's a good sign. A good sign in the sense that for people to realize that Cape independence is the only route, they need to become so disillusioned and disheartened with the political system that what that tells me is that youngsters are hurtful. They're sick and tired, and the mainstream political pathways and political parties have let them down. So I see that as a good thing, but it's a good thing from you measure the temperature of the political climate. It's a good thing people are not happy with the direction of the country, but it's a bad thing in the sense that the Cape Independence Party needs to do a better job then, and the Cape Independence movement as a whole, CIAG, United Liberty Alliance, Cape Exit, USAF, Sovereign State of Good Hope, all the various players in the Cape independence space, we all need to do a better job of tapping into those youngsters and saying, listen, guys, we know you're angry. We know it seems hopeless, but in fact, there's tremendous hope. There's tremendous excitement. There's an amazing opportunity. And often things have to get worse before they can get better. And I think if you look at the KZN riots a few weeks ago and where we are in this country, it's a great opportunity to say enough is enough. And Cape independence is a solution to this.
So where to from here for you?
Well, we've got elections coming up. Well, this is we're absolutely opposed to this agenda to try and move the elections to February next year, or even further than February next year. We elect politicians for a 5-year term. What essentially, if this goes ahead and the elections are postponed, we'll be opening up the slippery slide doorway to electing politicians for 6 years or more. This is not a democracy. This is not how things work. So we're absolutely opposed to the the changing of the elections. And so we hope that they will go ahead on the 27th of October. And we think that we're going to do exceptionally well in the upcoming elections. And I think our branding is well aligned to do that. The Cape Independence Party, as you can see, the Cape Independence flag behind me here. This is branding. This is identities, which people it's the only solution. People are excited about it, and I think when they see us on that ballot in the privacy of a ballot booth, I think we're going to see a lot of people putting their support behind us and us getting multiple seats in these upcoming elections. So once we can do that, we can start putting forward our plans.
There's a fair amount of criticism from mainstream media about Cape independence, even the idea of it. And there's a view that it is being driven by wealthy white men.
Well, I mean, that's absolutely not true. If you actually look at the polling results, I mean, the largest ethnic group. I mean, this is why I say, what happened to the Rainbow Nation? If we have to talk about skin color, fine. Let's talk about skin color. By far, the largest group that supports Cape independence is the majority population of the Cape, and that is the colored population, mixed ethnicity supporting Cape independence. And whites, blacks, colors across the spectrum. We're seeing support for this idea. So I don't buy into that. I think that it's a clever trick. It's a very simple trick, but it's a clever trick that the mainstream media uses by saying that if they don't want to have a discussion, the quickest way to tar and feather someone is to say, oh, you're a racist. And especially you're a white racist, and even more so if you're a white male racist. So these are all the little coin tags that they like to use to shut down debate, shut down discussion. And look, I think it worked for a while. It really did work. People were scared to talk. But, nowadays, regardless of your gender, regardless of your belief system, regardless of your race, people have cut through all of this. And they go, you know what? We want political policies that work. We want economic policies that work. And I think that's what the polling has shown, that regardless of your race, your gender, your belief system, people want Cape independence.
Jack, we heard from Phil Craig that he expects a referendum within 2 years and full-scale independence not that long afterwards. What is your time span?
It's a moving goal depending on how the ANC and national government plays their cards, frankly. So they have an opportunity to meet us at the negotiation table, and they have an opportunity to play their cards better for their own best interest. If they carry on doing what they are doing, then I agree with Phil. I think that they are doing such an atrocious job. They are creating such economic destruction. Frankly, I mean, the way that they've handled the coronavirus with these lockdowns, these unbelievable lockdowns. But frankly, this is why I'm wearing this yellow ribbon here, which is a quiet sign of solidarity for every single person that is, walking around with our masks. Some, you're not allowed to be to do certain work because you're. Are you a necessity? Is your work necessity or not? Everyone in the economy is necessary. We're all a part of this country, and we all need to work together. And so these lockdowns have completely destroyed people's lives. And there are far more effective ways of dealing with the virus, which we've seen many places around the world have done. You look at Florida and Texas versus other states in America, which had very little restrictions. And you look at the comparisons in infections and things like that, it's an absolute no-brainer. In fact, places which have had these restrictive mandates have, in fact, on average, done worse than the places that haven't. So the way the government has completely treated us like children, completed us like slaves, is unacceptable. So we need to hold the government to account. I urge people to wear a yellow ribbon if you are also opposed to these lockdown measures. And I think
what about the time span? What about the date for the referendum and for your ultimate objective of independence?
If the government continues with these lockdowns, if the government continues with their racist policies, if the government continues with expropriation without compensation, if they push forward more of their communist agenda, we're going to see Cape independence happen absolutely within a few years. So I think this next election is going to be very important, and I think the 2024 elections could be very important. So I think we certainly are talking about a matter of 2 to 5 years.
Before 2030, in other words.
Yes. I mean, once we have a majority in that referendum, we then also need to, that's not the end of the story. Then the negotiations take place. We need recognition from other countries around the world, etc. So there's a process to it. It's hard to say how long that'll take. If you look at Brexit, the government there dragged their heels, a lot longer than many people expected. So these things can move swiftly, as they have in some parts of the world. They can move more slowly. So, I won't venture making a firm prediction as to how long that'll take. But we're certainly entering the territory now where if the ANC national government doesn't change their tune, the wheels have been set in motion for Cape independence to be a majority supported position in the Cape very soon, and therefore a mere matter of time before it happens.